All right, let's welcome in our good friend Bob Vanderplots, who is literally taking his life in his own hands right now as we speak by sitting in my seat there in our BlazeTV studios in suburban Des Moines. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing really good. I've got this sudden surge of power, Steve, being in your chair, in your seat, and I'm swatting these wasps away, but I think I'm going to be okay.
I hope you got an EpiPen. That's all I got to say. All right, they like that chair. They like whoever is sitting in that chair. All right, let's get to a few things that you wanted to discuss this week. Let's start with the debate tomorrow. And I think it's very likely that this is the only time we're going to see these two individuals on a stage together. I agree with what Aaron has said the last couple of weeks, that I think Kamala's people have done everything they could to get out of this. And ABC, to their credit, hasn't given them the cover to do that. So here we go, right? And I just think in the end, and this is a tried and truism, maybe one day it will be proven to be false. But I'm gonna need to see it proven to me before I believe that it now is. When elections are about issues, Republicans win. And when elections are about personalities, Democrats win. All right? And to me, the way to expose her as not ready for prime time, as a construct of the very same people who in the shadows have been running the country this entire time, because we all know it wasn't Joe Biden, all right? The way to expose her there, to quote, to paraphrase, Hamlet, issues are the thing in which you will catch the conscience of the queen. Okay, that the way to expose her is issues, not her heritage, any of that other stuff. I think she will be geared up to play off of that and just say, see, this is the same meanie that you guys didn't want to vote for the last couple of times all over again. He's not serious about the country, but to expose her on the issues. What do you think?
Well, Steve, the reason I wanted to talk about this is that, as you know, I prepared for several debates when I ran for governor. And I would suggest with Donald Trump, he needs to control the debate. And I think it's exactly what you're saying. This needs to be about issues. It cannot be about personality. But even though that the mics are muted, whatever question you get asked, you need to make sure that you point out an inconsistency that she just said, a falsehood that she just said. You need to hold her accountable. Whatever the other issue, take control of that debate and then go ahead and answer the question. But the more he points out, listen, I was president. This is what we did when I was president, whether it be the appointment of 3 justices, moving the embassy to Jerusalem, a vibrant economy, whatever it is that he did. And now what you guys have done to this country in 4 years, the average voter knows that if I look at the issues, I was way better off 4 years ago than I am today. And so therefore the choice has got to be clear. But what I would suggest to Donald Trump, he needs to control the debate. Take the mic, hold her accountable, even with the muted mics, hold her accountable before you answer the question that was asked. Control the debate.
All right. One follow-up on this then. How does he do that without playing into the persona crafted of him, which he too often plays into?
Well, I think what it is, what you said, it's got to be about issues. If it's about her heritage or it's about something else, a personality thing, leave it alone. Don't let that get under your skin right now. But she's going to try to point out, listen, this guy's a convicted felon. He's been convicted of sexual assault. She's going to be throwing everything at him, and he needs to just turn it right around, and he needs to point out about what she has done to this country, take control of the debate, make it about the issues and what America is really voting for. And if he shows that not only was he the president, but he's what somebody that can view to be the next president, I think he wins. And this debate, as you mentioned earlier, I think it's the only debate. It is going to be huge in the outcome of this election.
Let's talk about this so-called Evangelicals for Harris. And, they've done some Zoom calls and a few other things. I really don't think this is a real thing. I mean, I really don't. I think that the intent of this is that there's really not a large cachet of evangelicals for Harris. The intent of this is to get the 2 to 4% of suburban megachurch going evangelical women who do not like Donald Trump to continue not liking Donald Trump, to suppress the potential Republican vote. That's what I think the actual intent of it is. But What are your thoughts, and why did you want to make sure we address this?
Yeah, well, first of all, even when I'm being sued and the family leader's being sued by the 1,000 friends of Polk County, it's not 1,000 friends. It might be 3 or 4 people who have an axe to grind to make sure that we don't get a property rezoning. It's not 1,000 friends. So just like the 200,000 reported evangelicals for Harris, everybody knows what this is. How do you dent the evangelical base? It's a huge base that tends to turn out and elect the most conservative, pro-family, pro-religious liberty candidate. In this case, would happen to be Donald Trump. But my reason for wanting to talk about evangelicals for Harris, what about evangelicals for Jesus? Let's keep the main thing the main thing. Because what it is that they're going to be all caught up. Well, you just said they're all caught up in the personality. They don't like Donald Trump. So therefore, I like the personality of Kamala Harris better. But when you take a look at the issues, whether it's the sanctity of human life, and although that's not where we want Donald Trump to be as far as we want him to be, but at least he's going to be way more pro-life than, say, Kamala Harris is, or the border issue, or the judicial issue, or the parental rights issue, or the gender issue, whatever the issue is that's concerned about you, we're looking at issues. But let us tell our base, whether it's an evangelical who happens to be voting for Trump or an evangelical who happens to be voting for Harris, let's keep reminding people the main thing, and it's not Trump or Harris, it happens to be Jesus. Evangelicals should be for Jesus first and foremost, not to an identity. And so when I hear the term evangelicals for Harris, it disturbs me, it bothers me, it kind of, like this is not how you communicate your testimony.
Who do you think their audience is?
I think their audience is say, listen, you guys have got a home. You guys don't like Donald Trump either. For whatever reason it might be, there's a lot of reasons why people would say, yeah, I don't like Donald Trump. I wish we had a different candidate, whatever it might be, to say you have a home. It's okay for you to come here. And therefore we have some prominent names. And they throw around like Billy Graham's granddaughter. So they got some prominent names to say, I'm going to be a spokesperson for evangelicals for Harris, but
they basically just went out and found like the one apostate family member of a bunch of famous people in Christianity, essentially.
And the whole idea is, how do we dampen that turnout? How do we take away from it? Because if Trump gets 76% or better, he's going to be president of the United States of the evangelical vote. If he gets 75% or lower, the risks go up that Kamala Harris is going to be your next president.
Or the overall turnout too. Okay, I mean, if evangelicals are more than 25% of the electorate, Trump will probably win.
Exactly.
If they're less than 25% of the electorate, Trump will probably lose, right?
And Steve, that even goes back to the first comment we were talking about, is the debate. The enthusiasm gap. Trump needs to get these people enthused to say, I want to go out to vote, so they make up that part of the electorate. So I think even his message there about, I'm going to stand, not all of you are going to stand with me, but I'm going to stand with you and remember what I did for you, and have the enthusiasm gap be in his favor.
What do you think is a pastor's responsibility in this election? For example, I try to put out a theology question for fun on my, because that's what I do for fun, I guess. I try to put out a theology question for fun on my social medias each broadcast day. Here is the question I asked today. I mean, a friend of mine has a book coming out, Vote Like Jesus. I respect that. I'm much more inclined to try to, as a human, when it comes to these kind of civic matters, look more like Paul, because he had to wrestle. His conscience had to wrestle. He's the closest in terms of apostolic leader in the New Testament to having to wrestle with the dichotomy of being in the world and not of it that we do in a free society. Because as a Roman citizen, he didn't have the level of freedom that we do as Americans now. But for the ancient world, it was very small p progressive. He had very nascent proto versions of civil liberties that we have now. For example, when he's falsely accused, he has the right for a free and swift trial. That was not something you really took for granted really anywhere in the world between being a Roman citizen and being an American citizen for the most part, if unless you were part of the favored class of people aligned with the ruling class of that country, culture, or era. And so he had some versions and variations of what it meant to be a citizen in a republican small r form of government. He wasn't necessarily voting that we know of, but at least he understood the tension between civil liberties and a free society, for him anyway, to some degree. And then also being a Christian, so now he's part of a marginalized class at the same time. So I try to look at him to do figure out a lot of the math. And I even asked today, therefore, how do you think he would vote in this election? So what do you think is the pastoral role in this election, Bob?
Well, I think this all fits in with the comprehensive viewpoint of the gospel. You're supposed to be salt and light to a culture, the timeless voice to a culture, a prophetic voice to the culture. In Daniel, I believe it's Daniel 2, it says, that God raises up kings and he puts down kings. And sometimes we get the king we deserve, not the king that we want. And in this country, for whatever reason, above my pay grade, but we have the responsibility of picking our leaders. And so I think now it's a time for the pastors to be a voice to this, to say we need the Christians to get up and go to the voting booth. They don't have to say vote Trump or vote Harris or vote Republican or vote Democrat, but they have to say, if you are looking at what is the best promotion of righteousness and justice, which is the institution of government, who best represents that? Not that they're a perfect candidate, but who best represents the advancement of righteousness and justice in a culture. And the big thing is to equip and prepare your congregation to be a voice at the voting booth. Steve, the most recent numbers that we've heard is 37% of Christians who are registered to vote who attend church on a regular basis. So they're like you and me. 37% aren't voting. So even if a small percentage were to move, if it went from 37% to 32%, you're going to get the church's voice to be the dominant voice at the voting booth. And that's what you just mentioned about the evangelical vote. If it's 25% of the electorate versus 20% of the electorate, 30% of the electorate versus 15% of the electorate, get the church's voice out to vote. And equip your flock in a way that government was instituted for our good. So it doesn't stop after Election Day, but whoever gets appointed office, whoever gets elected office, our job is now to minister to them like a Nathan to David or like a Joseph to Pharaoh. And we at the Family Leaders, Steve, we have put a great toolkit together for pastors about how can you do this comprehensively. And for your viewers, because this is meant for pastors, if you want your pastor to get it, have your pastor email me, bob@thefamilyleader.com, bob@thefamilyleader.com, and we will get them a non-partisan, biblical, gospel-centric way to engage this election.
Last thing, I've got about 2 minutes here. How much of this would really just be this tension and how to walk all these tight ropes and everything else that, frankly, in many cases are figments of our own fear and imagination and don't exist? But how much of this would just be alleviated if the rest of the year and in between Election Day, the pastors just opened up the Bible and preached what it said in totality, without any self-editing or watering down or spoonfuls of sugar to help the medicine go down? How much?
Oh, it'd matter a great deal. Matter of fact, we find out that people who are under solid teaching, under God's word, that when they go to vote, they're going to vote for the most pro-family, pro-religious liberty, pro-righteous.
Like Steph Curry, when he says he's voting for Kamala to protect baby killing, what church is he going to?
Exactly.
What church is that?
Exactly. And so it is. As a matter of fact, we get a lot of pastors, Steve, you've heard me say this before, pastors saying, well, I don't want to be political. And we're saying you don't need to be political.
Just be prophetic, open up the word and preach what's in it.
Be biblical and be culturally relevant. Because if the church stays silent on issues that are very relevant today, and that could even be boys participating in girls' sports, boys using women's locker rooms, as Todd and Ainsley have had to confront. Speak into that. What does the word say about gender? What does the word say about the nation of Israel? What does the word say about all the issues that are coming up, the life issue, whatever issue it is? But be biblical, be culturally relevant. And if you do that throughout the year, that's why it fits underneath the comprehensive nature of the gospel. If you do that throughout the whole year, When your flock is engaged, mobilized, they hear it from you, you should go to the election to vote. They're going to vote for the most righteous and just candidate. And I believe when the church shows up, good things happen.
Good stuff, Bob. Again, people want to get that presentation for either as a pastor or for their pastors. What do you want them to do again real quick?
Yeah, just send me an email, bob@thefamilyleader.com, bob@thefamilyleader.com. You get that to me, and our Church Ambassador Network team will get you the resources.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Thank you. God bless.
Same to you.